I've now slip stitched the bottom of my lining. This is on my front piece, and I'm ready to move on. What I'm going to deal with first is continue to deal with the front. So I'm going to smooth my lining down without pulling it. I want to make sure, I'll show you up here, I want to make sure that where I've got it stitched to the armhole, right? I'm smoothing it down, but I'm not pulling. That's incredibly important, right? So I'm going to smooth it down, and you can see, when we get down to the bottom, it makes this nice little pleat. What that's going to do is give us ease when we move in our jacket or we sit down. So that's a good thing. We're not going to stitch that down. We will end up pressing it. But the parts that we are going to stitch down are going to be here in the front, because you see we still have that opening right there. So I have given myself a stitch line to pin this along, because I'm going to slip stitch also now this front section, and I'm going to slip stitch it so that I'm continuing it on down my front facing, and I am going to slip stitch it all the way down to the bottom. That's important. I want it to hold. I don't want to see anything down here. So I'm going to slip stitch all of this down. I will press this, but I will not stitch this down, because what that allows now, as you'll see, is it allows some movement. But we have to deal with the back vent as well. So here is the side portion. This is all my lining as though it were down. So I'm going to move the back portion out of the way. Make sure everything is lined up, making sure that my seam line is lined up here, and it is. And that lines up, my lining lines up with the top of my vent. So I'm just going to put a pin up here to hold that in place so I don't pull it down, right? So now you'll notice the part of the lining that you turned under lines up with your underlap of your vent, and it lines up almost exactly at the edge. Now, I personally like to have maybe a tiny little bit of my fabric, my fashion fabric showing. So I'm going to pin this down, and so you can see, if I put my hand in it so you can see. So I have a tiny little bit of my fabric showing. Now, there are some books that say that you can machine this down, which you certainly could. You're never going to see it because it's covered over. It's the part that is covered, it's the underlap of your vent, right? So if you want to machine this down, top stitch this down, you certainly can. Or you can do a slip stitch and hand sew it down. It's really a personal preference because you're not going to see it. And you'll notice down here at the bottom, I've done the same thing. It has the little pleat in the bottom, and it will, because we have to stitch that all the way down to hold it in place. And then I'll go back and I'm going to gently press. Once I have stitched my pleat, once I have stitched the front opening on my lining, I will go and very gently press this down. Once you do that, we've got the lining secured in the front part of our jacket. But you have to do this first before we move on to lining the back portion. But it's not going to be any different, right? We're gonna prepare the back part by turning it up 5/8 of an inch. We're gonna line up our 5/8 of an inch with the raw edge of our hem. Whoops, making sure that our seams are lined up, and then we'll do the side, but I'll do that in the next video. And you can see, and we'll work how to work, let me slide that down, sorry, so how we figure out all of this top portion. And you will see more of your fashion fabric on the overlap of the vent. But for now, let's finish up the front part, and that means slip stitching the front. Do not stitch on the bottom anymore, and either machine stitching, which might be a little difficult to get into the machine stitch, or slip stitching the back portion down. And once I have that finished, I'll come back and show you how to press and then set up for the back portion.